Have you ever run into problems when using some of your Foredom products? Well, we thought we'd put together a really quick troubleshooting video for you that covers different things from flex shafts to micromotors, our vacuum system, hand pieces, and a number of other items. Let's just jump right in and take a look. When working with your micromotor, there are times that maybe it doesn't start and you haven't quite figured out why. So let's take a look at some of the different things that might go wrong and what you might want to check. First and foremost, we want to make certain we have power. So make sure your machine is turned on. You should also ensure that your plug is completely in. One other thing, you have a switch on here that allows you to check for voltage. Make certain that hasn't been switched to the wrong one. It can either be a 110 or a 220 depending on your location. If you happen to be working with a foot control, make certain that your connector is in nice and tight and that it is secure. One more thing you can check is your fuses. Make certain that the power is switched off if not already. You can unplug your machine. Using a small flathead screwdriver, you can open the fuse box right here, and there are two fuses in here. One will be your active fuse, and the other is a second fuse in case the first one burns out. Once you've checked to ensure that your fuse has not burned out, we can slide this back into place and plug in our machine once again. Once you've checked the fuse, the power, make certain that your foot pedal is attached, then we can start to look at some other items. If you see ERR, it means that there's an error. Just turn your machine off and back on. That should hopefully clear it. You also want to make certain that your machine is actually set to run. Now this is only going to come into play if you're on the hand control. So then you can tell your machine to run and then adjust your power as necessary. One thing we've had people do is not have a foot pedal connected, so there would be nothing attached here at the back, and they had it set to foot and were not able to get their machine to run because, again, it was set on the foot setting. Once more, just ensure that you have it in the proper position, and then you can run your machine and adjust that as necessary. Now, when it comes to storing your handpiece on a micromotor, you have a couple of options. One, you have a handpiece cradle that will come with your machine. You also have a small attachment here on the side where then you can use that to hold your handpiece as well. One more connection to check if your machine is not running properly is to ensure that your handpiece is connected securely here on the front of your machine. So you can take that, check it out, and just ensure that everything is plugged in and you screwed everything in nice and tight. Now, there are different micromotor systems available out there, so just know that there are some similarities but differences. So we've already talked a little bit about this micromotor. Let's talk a little bit about the brush type micromotor. So once again, for storing our handpiece, we have a cradle that we can use on this one. Again, you would just want to make sure that your handpiece is plugged in. Also, if you are using a foot pedal, you can plug that in here on the back of the machine. Now you have two options for your foot pedal. You have a variable foot pedal, but you also have an on-off foot pedal. And you'll see that there's a different connector for that. Once more, you also want to ensure that you have the right voltage selected for your location. Now, if you need to switch out the fuse on this machine, it's a little bit different, and you'll want to refer to your owner's manual for that. But essentially, you're going to unplug everything and make certain that your machine is off. There are screws here underneath each of these feet. You'll pop that out, and the fuse is located just inside the box right here. So once again, make sure that you look at your owner's manual for that. If you don't have that, it is online, and we'll provide links down in the description. Now, to ensure that your machine is working, you'll want to kick your power on. Again, you can change your speed to whatever you're going to have and switch between your hand or your foot. So in this case, I have it on a foot pedal. We can switch our forward and reverse. It is important that if you are going to switch your directions, that you stop your machine totally before switching directions and then going again. If you happen to have an overload error, which is if you've given it too much torque, more than it can handle, the light here will come on. To reset that, simply turn your machine off, wait for a moment, and then switch it back on, and it should reset. When it comes to storing your hand pieces, both of these are quick change micromotor hand pieces. Now, because of that, there is a collet inside that can be kind of fragile. What you want to make certain that you do is always store some kind of a mandrel inside of this when it's not being used. That is going to keep your collet from being crushed. You should never close down on your handpiece if you do not have a mandrel in your handpiece. When it comes to storing your handpieces, this is a great solution. Super simple and very easy to make. I went over to the hardware store, picked up a piece of 2x2 inch wood and some 3/8 inch dowel, cut them down to size, inserted them, and that is all there is to that. And now I have all of my handpieces accessible, ready to go, stored upright, so I don't have to worry about them being damaged. Anytime you have a quick change handpiece, now that means that it's going to hold one of the 3/32 or the 1/8 inch mandrels or shanks on your accessories, then you're going to make certain that you always store one of those mandrels inside of your handpiece at any time. You never want to close down on your handpiece without something in that, or you run the risk of damaging your collet inside. Now, contrary to what a lot of jewelers do, leaving your handpiece hanging down on your flex shaft can actually damage your handpiece. So when you are not using your handpiece, you have a couple of options. One, you can either remove it and stand it on a stand like I've just showed you, or you can get one of these little handpiece holders to go along your handpiece stand and store it like this. If it's hanging down, a number of things can happen. One, it can bang into your bench or other objects around it. Plus, as you use this, that grease that's on your flex shaft warms up and can get quite loose and liquidy and run itself down into your handpiece. If you get the oil and grease into your handpiece, it can then mess with the bearings, things will get overheated, and you'll have to replace that handpiece. So better safe than sorry, just pull your handpiece off, store it on a handpiece holder, or just along on your bench. Even laying down is better than having it hang down from the flex shaft. Changing out your handpiece is a very easy operation. There's a small key here on the end of the shaft tip, and that is going to be inserted into the notch that is inside of your handpiece. Now, you could just to take and look inside to see where that opening is, lining it up with that little key and clicking it into place. Now, to remove this, I just hold on to the end of my shaft and my handpiece, and I'm going to pull. Now, one of the things that I like to do is push on my pedal just a little bit so it starts to spin that key. And then when I push it into my handpiece, it's going to engage. And once it's engaged, then I can simply push. And that is a very simple way to insert your handpiece. Swapping out handpieces, quite easy. You simply remove one by pulling and just reseating the next one and getting that into place. Now, you'll notice it did take a little bit of effort to both pull it off and to push it into place, and that is intentional. You don't want these to be coming off and on too easily, or you run the risk of having them just come off while you're using them. When you are working with an SR motor that has both the forward and the reverse, it is important that you make certain that your motor comes to a complete stop and you turn it off before you change its directions. So in this case, I have it set on forward. I'm just going to take my rocker switch to that middle section and then move it all the way over to the reverse. Now, if I wanted to go back to forward again, I would take it to that middle section, make sure it's turned off completely, no longer running, and then I can switch that. That is going to ensure that your motor has a much longer life and you don't damage it. Now, what happens if you break the shaft, the actual shaft on your flex shaft? Well, they are very easily and quite affordably replaced. So I have a couple of videos that I've already put out that show every step that you need to go through and maintain your flex shaft, replace it, and also prepare it so that it is ready for use. So make sure you check out the description below and we will have links for that. Very easy to find. Now, some of the ways that shafts can be broken if you overheat them. Sometimes they can melt through that outer shaft. I happened to drop one of my flex shafts and got a 90-degree bend in one of the shafts. Totally needed to be replaced. So things like that happen, and again, it's very easy to change them out. How do you know if your brushes need to be changed? Well, let's talk about the flex shaft. In that case, I'm either going to feel it or I'm going to hear it. My flex shaft just won't sound quite the way I'm used to hearing it sound. Maybe there's a little bit of a grinding noise, or if I'm going to feel it, then maybe things just are not running quite as smoothly as they used to. And those are some kind of key points for me to know that it's time to check those brushes. In addition, you may intermittently lose some power, and that is because as these brushes wear down, they will then lose contact with the motor itself. Now, when it comes time to replacing these brushes, just remember they need to be at a very minimum a 1/4 inch long. Now, one of the things that some people get a little bit intimidated by is changing out the brushes in the motors. Well, no worries, they're really not that difficult. And again, we have several videos showing you how to do that, as well as walking you through step by step in the owner's manual for each of those items. The owner's manual both came with your machine, and they can also easily be found online. Once again, we will include links for those manuals down in the description of this video. What happens when you have a machine that won't turn on? Well, there's a couple of different things to check, like the basic ones. Make sure your power is plugged in, make sure you have it in a mode that is going to allow it to run, and then if all of those things fail, check your fuses. And how do you know if your fuse has gone bad? Well, here are side-by-side comparisons of 2 different fuses. One is bad and one is not. You can easily see that black charred mark. Also notice that there are different size fuses, and that is because different machines are going to be requiring different fuses. So once again, make sure you check that owner's manual to figure out which fuse you need, as well as step-by-step instructions on how to replace that fuse. How do you know where a fuse is located? Well, depending on the machine you have, they're going to be located in different places. And in a lot of them, there will be a spare fuse ready for you to go so that you have minimal downtime. But sometimes they're in a little different place and they might be hard to locate. In that case, make sure you check your owner's manual for that. And it will take you step by step and show you how to get to the fuse, which fuse to reorder when you need that, and how to replace it and get you back up and running. Now, one more thing, it is very important with your hand pieces not to get them wet. You definitely do not want any water in those inner workings of the handpiece. You will very easily damage that. So you can purchase some aftermarket splashback kits, or just use a plastic bag and wrap that up when you're doing any kind of wet drilling. So that's going to be like if I'm drilling through a stone or anything like that. So just think about your tools. Make sure that you're taking the time to maintain them properly, and they will last you a lifetime. So hopefully you found this troubleshooting video helpful. Now, if you still have questions and we didn't address the question that you have, be sure to drop us a line. You can put that here in the comment section, or you can always reach out to us on social media or even in email. We're happy to answer any questions you might have. As always, we love to hear your comments and feedback. Just drop those as a comment down in the video. We'll see you guys next time.